Harley-Davidson is on the verge of bankruptcy, and 2025 is shaping up to be the worst year yet. In the fourth quarter of 2024 alone, Harley-Davidson posted a jaw-dropping loss of $117 million. To put that into perspective, just a year earlier, they had managed to post a $26 million profit. Dealerships are closing across the country. Lifelong fans are furious. Instead of fixing their problems, Harley is doubling down on electric motorcycles. Something their loyal riders never asked for and definitely don't want. The Harley brand that people loved is slipping away fast. The consequences are already clear. Die-hard riders are jumping ship, turning to brands like Indian Motorcycles and others that still respect the spirit of the open road. Harley-Davidson goes bankrupt. What happens to the fans? Harley's downfall didn't happen overnight. For decades, Harley's built its reputation on being the ride of choice for blue-collar Americans. But somewhere along the way, Harley decided it wanted to be a luxury brand, and the price tag started climbing high. Take the Sportster, for example, Harley's so-called entry-level bike. By 2024, buying a new Sportster would set you back more than $16,000. And before you add any upgrades or accessories, which, let's be honest, everyone does. Meanwhile, Honda and Yamaha were selling comparable cruisers for $8,000 to $11,000, literally half the price. Even Indian Motorcycles, Harley's toughest American competitor, offered models like the Scout starting at around $11,000. And it gets worse. If you wanted one of Harley's top-tier bikes, like the CVO Road Glide, you were looking at a price tag of $45,000. That's not just the price of a bike, that's the price of a luxury car or the down payment on a house in some places. In an economy where wages are stagnating, costs of living are skyrocketing, and most people are pinching pennies just to get by, Harley's pricing strategy wasn't just out of touch, it was insane. The very riders who had made Harley a legend, the working class men and women who lived for Saturday night rides and Sunday wrench sessions, found themselves priced out of the dream they had helped build. Harley didn't just lose customers, it lost its identity. And when the next generation of riders looked at those price tags, they didn't see freedom. They saw a company that didn't get them and didn't care to try. But even if you managed to scrape together the cash for a Harley, the problems didn't stop once you rolled off the lot. In fact, for many riders, that's when the nightmare really started. Reports started flooding in. Mechanical failures, glitches, cosmetic defects, all happening on bikes that were brand new. You spend $30,000 or more on a motorcycle, and within weeks, you're back at the dealership fighting over warranty repairs. Dealerships around the country were overwhelmed. Service departments were flooded with warranty claims. Angry customers shared photos online. Cracked welds, leaking fuel gauges, peeling paint, faulty electronics. These weren't isolated incidents. This was an epidemic. Harley-Davidson, the brand once synonymous with rugged reliability, suddenly looked cheap and fragile. It wasn't just embarrassing, it was infuriating. Riders felt betrayed. They weren't just losing money, they were losing faith. And to make it even worse, Harley's corporate response was slow, cold, and defensive. Warranty claims were delayed, denied, or buried under fine print. Dealership staff, already under pressure from declining sales, struggled to keep frustrated customers happy. For a brand that had spent decades building a myth around loyalty, brotherhood, and the pride of ownership, this wasn't just a PR disaster, it was a death blow. People don't just ride Harleys because they're motorcycles, they ride them because they believe in them. When that belief is shattered, it's almost impossible to glue it back together. One of the biggest reasons Harley-Davidson lost its way is because it forgot what made it special in the first place. Harley used to be about raw American power, rugged good looks, and that unmistakable sense of freedom. You didn't just ride a Harley, you wore it like a badge of honor. But over the last decade, Harley made a massive mistake. It started chasing trends instead of honoring its roots. Take the V-Rod, for example. Harley launched it with a water-cooled engine and sleek, futuristic styling, thinking it would pull in a new kind of customer. But it didn't. Instead, it confused and alienated their loyal riders. People didn't want a Harley that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi movie. They wanted something that looked and felt like American iron, something heavy, gritty, and full of soul. The V-Rod wasn't it. And Harley didn't stop there. They doubled down on the mistakes with the Pan America, their attempt at an adventure bike. While critics gave it decent reviews for performance, Harley's core riders looked at it and asked one question: what the hell is this? It didn't look like a Harley, it didn't feel like a Harley, it was just another shiny tech toy in a sea of shiny tech toys. Somewhere along the way, Harley's design philosophy stopped being about honoring the outlaw spirit and started trying to fit into Silicon Valley's clean, minimalist aesthetic. Sleeker lines, less chrome, futuristic curves. It all felt soulless. When longtime riders walked into dealerships, they didn't see the muscular beast they used to dream about. They saw something unrecognizable. And when a brand built on identity loses its look and feel, it loses everything. Harley's bike stopped speaking to the hearts of the people who built the brand. That's a mistake you just can't fix with a new paint job. But Harley's real downfall wasn't just about ugly bikes. It was about a much deeper betrayal. The kind that cuts right to the bone. Somewhere along the way, Harley-Davidson stopped building motorcycles for rebels, outlaws, and working-class heroes, and started building them for shareholders. It happened slowly, almost so gradually that nobody even noticed. But once Harley went public back in the 1980s, the seeds were planted. Over time, the soul of Harley got buried under layers of corporate suits, boardroom strategies, and Wall Street demands. Marketing shifted. It used to be about freedom, grit, leather jackets, and the wind in your face. It was about brotherhood and back roads, bar fights, and campfires. But in recent years, Harley's ads started looking like luxury car commercials. Perfectly groomed models, gleaming showrooms, polished lifestyle photos that felt staged and sterile. It was no longer about riding into the sunset with your buddies. It was about presenting an image, an expensive, sanitized image designed to impress investors, not inspire riders. Wall Street replaced Main Street. Spreadsheets replaced open highways. Harley's leadership cared more about quarterly earnings than about the deep, messy, beautiful culture that had always made the brand great. And the riders felt it. Oh, they felt it. Veterans, mechanics, blue-collar bikers, the very people who had bled for this brand started feeling like they didn't belong anymore. Like they weren't the customers Harley wanted. Like they were being replaced by rich hobbyists and tech bros who didn't know a carburetor from a latte machine. Harley wasn't just selling motorcycles anymore. It was selling out, and the people who loved it the most could see it happening in real time. And if all of that wasn't enough, Harley decided to roll the dice on one of the riskiest moves in its history. They launched the LiveWire, their first fully electric motorcycle, and they thought it would change everything. On paper, it sounded great. The world was shifting toward electric vehicles. Companies like Tesla were booming. Harley figured it could catch a new wave of young, eco-conscious, tech-savvy riders. The idea was bold. The execution, an absolute disaster. First off, the price tag. Over $22,000. That's insane. That's more expensive than some of Harley's most beloved touring bikes. And for what? A bike that didn't even have the signature Harley-Davidson rumble? A bike that could barely go 100 miles before needing hours to recharge. Harley completely misread the room. Their core customers didn't want a silent motorcycle. They didn't want an eco-friendly commuting solution. They wanted power, noise, and that feeling of raw freedom you get when you twist the throttle and hear the earth roar back at you. And the young tech crowd Harley tried so desperately to attract, they weren't interested either. If they wanted electric, they had cheaper, better options. The LiveWire was priced like a Ferrari and offered the thrill of a golf cart. Sales were a catastrophe. Dealers couldn't give them away. Eventually, Harley had to spin off LiveWire into its own separate brand just to try and minimize the embarrassment. But by then, the damage was already done. The LiveWire wasn't just a failed product. It was a flashing neon sign to the world that Harley-Davidson's leadership had completely lost touch with reality. They weren't listening to riders anymore. They were chasing headlines, investors, and buzzwords, and they drove a knife right into the heart of everything Harley was supposed to stand for. As if pricing themselves out of reach and betraying their roots wasn't enough, Harley-Davidson made another massive misstep, and this one hit riders straight in the gut. Somewhere along the way, Harley decided to jump headfirst into the world of corporate activism. They started pumping out market campaigns focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. They plastered their social media with polished ads about corporate responsibility and workplace diversity. Now don't get it twisted. Riders weren't mad because Harley believed in fairness or equality. That wasn't the problem. The problem was simple. It felt fake. It felt forced. It felt like Harley was pandering to whatever was trending on Wall Street or Twitter that month, instead of standing by the rough and tumble, all-are-welcome spirit that had built their empire. Harley loyal customers didn't want sanitized, polished, boardroom-approved advertising campaigns. They wanted to see riders tearing down back roads, engines roaring, faces covered in road dust and grinning from ear to ear. They wanted the grit, the soul, the rebellion, not corporate virtue signaling. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Longtime Harley owners, the blue-collar backbone of the brand, started venting online. Social media exploded with angry posts and calls for boycotts. Riders who had proudly flown the Harley flag for decades suddenly felt like strangers in their own community. Dealership foot traffic started dropping. Once bustling showrooms started feeling emptier and quieter. And out in the real world, on the highways, the campgrounds, the meetups, people were talking, not just grumbling about high prices anymore. They were questioning whether Harley even understood them anymore. And trying to look progressive for the sake of public approval, Harley forgot the one rule you can never break. You never turn your back on the people who built you. For decades, Harley-Davidson's greatest weapon wasn't its engineering or its marketing. It was loyalty. Fierce, unbreakable, almost tribal loyalty. Families passed down Harley love from fathers to sons, mothers to daughters. It was about pride. It was about belonging. But loyalty isn't something you can abuse without consequences. And after years of overpriced bikes, design disasters, corporate tone deafness, and cultural betrayal, something Harley thought would never happen finally did. Riders started walking away. It wasn't a slow drift either. It was a stampede. Membership in the Harley Owners Group, HOG, declined sharply. Major events like the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally, once a sea of Harley jackets and American flags, reported noticeable drops in Harley attendance. And it wasn't just that people stopped buying new Harleys. Some made a public show of ditching their bikes altogether. Riders who had bled Harley orange and black were now showing up on Indian motorcycles, on Triumphs, on Hondas and Yamahas. It wasn't just about the motorcycles anymore. It was about trust. And once trust is broken, it's almost impossible to win it back. Harley didn't just lose customers, they lost believers. They lost the men and women who had once proudly tattooed Harley logos on their bodies and pledged their loyalty for life. When you lose that, no marketing campaign or flash sale is going to save you. While Harley was stumbling, one of its oldest rivals was plotting the ultimate comeback. Indian Motorcycles, the only American brand that could go toe-to-toe with Harley in terms of heritage and legend, seized the opportunity with both hands, and they didn't miss. Backed by Polaris Industries, a company that knew how to play the long game, Indian came roaring back from the dead. But they didn't just reappear. They studied everything Harley was doing wrong and did the exact opposite. Where Harley jacked up prices, Indian delivered incredible value. Where Harley compromised on quality, Indian obsessed over fit, finish, and performance. Where Harley chased fleeting trends and corporate buzzwords, Indian stayed laser-focused on classic American motorcycling spirit. They rolled out the Thunderstroke engine and Power Plus lines, delivering powerful, reliable V-twins that honor traditions but don't skimp on modern performance. Their bikes looked like they belong in an old Western movie, but rode like cutting-edge machines. The Indian Scout, the Chief Dark Horse, the Challenger, these bikes weren't just competing with Harley's offerings, they were beating them. In some segments, Indian models outsold Harleys for the first time in decades. Riders who felt betrayed by Harley's prices, politics, and poor quality found a warm, welcoming home in Indian dealerships. And the craziest part? Indian didn't have to trash Harley to win. They just had to stay true to what Harley itself had abandoned. While Harley stumbled over its own mistakes, Indian simply showed up, offering riders what they really wanted, and watched as Harley's empire started to crumble. While Harley-Davidson was busy alienating its core riders at home, a much bigger storm was brewing overseas, and Harley never saw it coming until it was too late. For years, Japanese and European motorcycle brands had been sharpening their swords, building a reputation for reliability, affordability, and style. Brands like Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, BMW, and Royal Enfield didn't just catch up to Harley, they blew past it. Honda led the charge, offering bikes like the Rebel series and the Gold Wing that delivered comfort, cutting-edge engineering, and unbeatable prices. Yamaha rolled out the MT series and cruisers like the Bolt that young riders adored, sleek, fast, affordable, and built like tanks. BMW stormed into the premium cruiser market with machines like the R18 combining German precision with old-school soul. Even Royal Enfield, once seen as a small player, exploded onto the global scene, capturing younger buyers with its stylish, retro-inspired bikes at entry-level prices Harley couldn't even touch. And here's the real kicker. These brands didn't just beat Harley on price. They beat them on reliability, on tech features, and on style. In markets crossed Asia, Europe, and even Latin America, Harley became a distant afterthought, a dusty relic of America that fewer and fewer global riders identified with. While Harley desperately clung to its shrinking US base, the world moved on. Riders around the globe wanted motorcycles that were fun, fast, reliable, and affordable. Harley's heavy cruisers with sky-high prices just didn't fit that world anymore. Outside of America's borders, Harley-Davidson wasn't the king of the road. It was just another brand struggling to stay relevant and losing badly. If you want to know just how deep Harley's collapse runs, you don't have to look at corporate earning reports or stock prices. Just drive down the highway and look at the dealerships or what's left of them. Harley-Davidson's dealership networks wasn't just a sales machine. It was the beating heart of the Harley community. These weren't just places to buy a bike. They were hubs, meeting spots, cultural landmarks, places where riders built friendships, swapped stories, tuned their bikes, and organized charity rides. But between 2023 and 2025, that heart started flatlining. Dozens of small, family-owned Harley dealerships shut their doors for good, crushed under the weight of collapsing sales and rising debts. Fullerton Harley-Davidson, Alexandria Harley-Davidson, shops that had been open for generations just vanished. Why? It wasn't just that fewer bikes were being sold, it was the brutal double punch of unsold inventory piling up, and Harley's own corporate policies making survival impossible. Dealerships were drowning in inventory they couldn't move. Every bike sitting on the showroom floor was a ticking time bomb. Each month they owed more interest on floor plan loans. As interest rates climbed, the financial pressure became unbearable. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments down below.